Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast from Northern California. I have the founder and CEO of Pay Rio. We're going to hear all about what it is, payments, and focus on cannabis and alternative medicines. Aubrey Amatelli, I'm really happy to have her. She's had a career at JP Morgan and now she's doing Pay Rio. So I'm really happy to have her on. Welcome, Aubrey.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be on today.
Yeah, and briefly introduce yourself and we will dive into the questions.
Yeah, I'm Aubrey Amatelli. I founded Pay Rio in 2022, and I'm born and raised in Silicon Valley, and we are based here in Northern California in East Bay, and really great to be on the show.
Yeah. And briefly chronicle your journey because you started your career at JP Morgan and you rose through it. What led you to found and start Pay Rio?
Great question. As I mentioned, born and raised in the Silicon Valley. And so when I started my career at JP Morgan, it was actually by acquisition of a startup that I was working at in San Francisco in 2012. And so going from thriving in the startup world as a brand new employee to a big bank, it was a really great transition for me. Actually, at the time I was having kids, but after a decade, I was ready to get back up into the startup world, and my kids are a little bit older, and I've just always had it in my blood, I say, to start a company. So I took the leap of faith and did that in 22 and married my two passions. So payments became my passion. I live and breathe payments. I'm a glorified payment nerd. And then I also, growing up in California, cannabis and alternative medicines have been around and I've seen how they've helped people. So it was a really great way for me to take two industries that I love and bring them together.
Yeah. And it's great growing up in the Silicon Valley, this hotbed of just innovation and people doing new, creative, disruptive ways of doing things. So, how does know that? How does Pay Rio? What's its USP in the cannabis and alternative medicine industry?
So I guess, what do you mean by that? What technology are we bringing?
Yeah, what distinguishes Pay Rio from other payment providers in cannabis?
So my background from JP Morgan, the largest credit card processor in the world, has been really integral in our success in the cannabis industry. Because cannabis is federally illegal, it is legal on a state by state basis, but because of the federal regulations, Visa and MasterCard, which are our governing body as payment processors, don't see cannabis the same. So the industry can't go out and get payments through Square or through Stripe or Adyen, some of the bigger payment processors. They have to find unique ways to accept payments. And that's what we bring. So essentially, my knowledge of payments into the industry, evaluating different technologies in the industry and creating one and bringing technologies to the market that are compliant with Visa and MasterCard.
Hmm, interesting. And just briefly explain how Pay Rio works. Is it based on fiat or is it you have to accept a coin or talk about the fees, the processing fees? I know with payments you've got these 3 to 5% charges now. How does Pay Rio help address all of that?
So we have many different technologies we bring to market. That we launched a company with a wallet-based technology similar to Venmo. Since then, we've grown to other technologies. Coin is one we bring to the market. We also help with bringing just traditional payments through the ATM rails. Have brought eCheck and Plaid to the market to help process payments through, on the back end, actually physical checks being written. So a lot of unique ways, some very new, like Bitcoin, some very archaic, like physical checks being written, but in an e-commerce technology fashion. We find ways to help, and unfortunately, we just can't use the traditional solutions today.
Huh, interesting. And the other question I have for you is how did you survive Operation Choke Point when Obama and them they were trying to shut down like the guns, the cannabis, all of that? How did you survive that whole ordeal?
So it didn't really affect us. We're supporting the dispensaries, or we also help with alternative medicines like CBD, THCA, cannabis seeds, psilocybin spores. So we're essentially enabling the dispensaries or the e-commerce websites to accept payment. And we didn't see there wasn't any change in the what way we operated with that.
And how did you avoid getting debanked? Because if you're on the payment processors, what I mean, for example, Bank of America or Wells Fargo, or did they a lot of them stopped working with these types of merchants in these industries?
Yeah, the big banks have never worked with the merchants in these alternative medicine and cannabis industries. However, there are banks that are willing to take the risk, actually hundreds of banks across the country who do support the cannabis industry. It is harder to find a bank account. When I set up my company in 2022, I went to JP Morgan first and then Silicon Valley Bank at the time and wasn't able to get an account just because I was cannabis adjacent, even though I never touched the plant. But there are plenty of other banks to help. They're just not the mainstream big banks. There is something called the Safer Banking Act that is out right now looking to be passed. If that is passed in the future, it's failed a few times already. But if it is passed in the future, then that's going to open up a lot of the opportunity for bigger banks.
Interesting. And talk about just the challenges with the regulatory landscape, because you like people like, for example, they're going on in, I don't know, like Texas or California or New York or other states. And how do you address these concerns?
So we follow whatever the federal regulations are, right? At Texas recently, I think banned THCA, or it's on the ballot, and they're looking over to start to accept cannabis. So we have customers that are processing hemp and customers that are processing hemp online that we now have to essentially regulate where they ship the hemp to. So we're always sticking with what the rules and regulations are. And if they change, we let our customers know and they no longer can ship to those locations. We want to keep all of our customers compliant so that they can stay up in processing, following whatever rules are in the market. And as they change, we change with them.
Interesting. The next question I have for you is, where do you see the cannabis industry going? Because, for example, a good friend and colleague of mine, he's in the crypto industry and he founded a company in 2012, and he's seen all the ups and downs, the crashes, all the scams and all of that, and almost got killed during Biden. And now kind of Trump is in and he's championed this new technology. How does the cannabis industry compare? Is like Trump a supporter, or you feel like there's even more significant backlash or opposition? Talk about that.
I think going into the election, Trump and his team, I'm not super political, so like I can tell you very high level. I think that team was supportive of cannabis. Now that they're in office, I'm not sure it's a high priority or a priority at all. And so there are changes already made with hemp in the hemp industry. From a cannabis standpoint, I still think we're many years out from federal legalization. Hopefully, we can update the Safer Banking Act, as I mentioned earlier. Hopefully, that can go through, but federal legalization is still quite a ways out. And we're used to that. Like we found ways to support the dispensaries. The dispensaries found ways to support their customer through all of that, but it is hard. It makes the industry a lot harder. We don't have necessarily an even playing field with the coffee shop next door or the grocery store. It's a lot more expensive and harder to be approved, but we jump through the hoops and we make it work.
Interesting. The other question I have for you is funding for Pay Rio. Is it bootstrapped? Is it kind of mom and pop? Is it angel? Is it venture capital? And your plans for scaling?
Yeah, so bootstrap. This is my baby, my fourth child. I used the money I had in savings to start the company. I started it with very low cost, 1099 sales employees and myself working and being on commission only roles, very modeling after kind of the real estate role, right? So very high commission with our sales team. They work hard, they get paid well. So it was a very low cost for me to start the company, but still a cost. but I have not taken in investors. I don't plan to. We were profitable within the first year. We continue to be profitable. And I like to scale at the way we're scaling. Acquiring a company or being acquired is definitely something I'm interested in the future. But right now, we're doing well and we're growing. And when cannabis becomes federally legal, or when it looks like it's about to, that's when I'm going to have to start thinking about one or the other, being acquired or acquiring.
Yeah, interesting. The other question is talk about some of the challenges with being an entrepreneur and how you succeeded and overcame those challenges.
Woo! Being an entrepreneur, this is, I say, the best job I've ever had. I really manifested my dream job, bringing together my two passions and going into starting a company. You're bright eyed, right? You see the opportunity, you're gaining success. It is the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life. Some of the biggest roadblocks, though, that I've faced are the best learning lessons that I faced. I went to see an acquired live podcast. It's a really cool podcast, tech podcast in San Francisco. JP Morgan Payments actually put it on. So I went to see it as a founder of Pay Rio, and Mark Zuckerberg was speaking. The CEO of Spotify was there. The founder of NVIDIA was there, and they had a question. The podcast host asked a question: would you ever start Meta if you'd known what you knew now? And he said, like, all of them unanimously said, no, they would not start the biggest companies in the world had they known what they know now. And that was really the first time I felt seen, being like a founder on my own. I knew it was hard, but it was nice to have that validation that others felt the same way. And I think the success comes from working through the hard times, because it's always cyclical, right? Ups and downs.
Yeah. What are some of your biggest successes, moments in Pay Rio's history, and like the clients you've helped or the customers you've helped? Talk about those.
We were recently named on Cannabis Business Times, which is one of the largest publications in cannabis, best company to work for in 2025. We were among a handful of other companies, but we were ranked the first. We were ranked number one there. I almost fell off my chair. My companies, like my family, we have a really close group, 25 plus employees now. But that award came after interviewing every single employee, surveying them, looking at our benefits and how we treated them, and we won that award. So that to me is just a huge success, because it means that I'm leading in a way that all my employees are happy and love where they work. So that was a great success. And I think the other one is I was named as 40 under 40 top entrepreneurs in the cannabis world as well last year.
Interesting. Rounding it out, what's the number one mindset that's helped you stick with it and succeed in this industry?
Ooh, what's the number one mindset? For me, it's sticking to my core mission, sticking to what I love. And when I started this company, I wanted to be a female entrepreneur and lift up women and stay-at-home moms and treat my customers the way they deserve to be treated. They aren't a number. We know all of them really well. And just stick to my core values. Don't sway off if it looks like you'll get to profit money faster here, or this technology looks good, but it doesn't hit all my boxes. Go there. Just staying the course and staying true to my core values has been successful for a Pay Rio.
Yeah, interesting. And if people listening to this podcast were wanting to connect with you and check out Pay Rio, how would they do that?
So if you go to our website, payrio.com, and you click meet the team, you'll actually see our entire team, but you'll be able to see I'm on there, and you can book a meeting directly with me if you want to have a conversation, talk more about payments or alternative medicines. I'm here for it. I love connecting with the community. You can also follow us on Instagram at payrio_HQ, as well as X. We're on both of those platforms. And then LinkedIn, I'm there and my Pay Rio's there. And we have a lot of really great information that we share all the time about the industry, about payments, and what's going on in our world. So would love to connect with everyone in those spaces.
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about your very interesting company.
Thank you for having me.